Thank you so much, Peter. Can you confirm you can hear my voice and also see my screen?
Yes, I hear you loud and clear, and we can see your screen.
Right, great. So good evening, everyone. Peter, thanks for inviting me here and also giving me this wonderful topic as well. I think the only constraint is that your time constraint is really constraining. You're located just to 20 minutes alone to engaging on a very
Apologies.
interesting,
Apologies.
very interesting. Oh yeah. So guys, I don't know. Peter is first of all a wonderful guy, yeah. But then again, I'm not sure you were very wonderful in allocating time. But anyway, there's so much to talk about, right? Apologies, guys. Once again, we are going to run through a whole lot in just less than within 15 minutes. Again, apologies, guys, but hold Peter responsible for that. Therefore, guys, since we're going to run through a whole lot of information right now, again, apologies is going to be a little bit scholarly because we are scholars, you know. If we want to build a nation, we need to be scholars. So scholars that build nations, right? The Western economies, the developed economies of the world were conceived by fertile minds who were truly scholars. Again, I'm going to go right down into the business of the day, then would run through what I have for you. Peter had already introduced me. All right, so my name is Burutolu. I'm for the built environment, right? Building things, building societies, and building a nation as well. So at heart, inside my heart, I am an industrialist, okay? And then I build businesses and support startups as well. Yeah, so this year, I've been able to, through my knowledge and skill, and also the platform I have at CC Hub, to support over 100 startups in my portfolio through our incubation and acceleration programs over there across Nigeria and across Africa as well. CC Hub is a Pan-African innovation hub. We have physical presence in 5 African countries, but our digital footprint currently as of today are scaled to 43 African countries. Again, I'm going to talk so much about why this is very special to me and also why I find this to be my own vocation or divine calling. Also, why I threw away the idea of jackparing and to pour myself out there in building not just Nigeria, but Africa as well. Right. Please, I need 2 persons to type very fast on the chat comment. Which country do you think this is? If you don't understand what this is, so this country, 75% of them are living in rural settings, right? 2 out of 10 infants die before they turn 2. There's just 20% of electricity available in the country. They spend 52% of their income on food, and then only 10% in secondary school, and life expectancy is 45. Which country do you think this is? The person that gets it gets $100 from me. I'm just kidding. Okay. Prince says Nigeria. Indubisi says Nigeria. I think Nigeria. Daniel says Nigeria. Precious Praise says Nigeria. Esther, Nigeria. Obianuju, Nigeria. Daniel again, Ethiopia. This is very amazing. All right, guys. I'm going to shock you in the next slide. Voila. So, guys, this is the United States of America 200 years ago. 200 years ago, as you can see, America was like an African country, a third world country. Exactly. It's very surprising. Again, let me be a little bit hopeful because we are here to build hope. If you look at this data on your screen right now, Nigeria is a little bit better than this. As of today, the life expectancy of Nigeria is 52. You can Google it and confirm it later on. But truly, our life expectancy is 52, not 45. The percentage of Nigerians who have attended secondary school is way higher than this as well. Well, income, okay. Electricity, okay. Infant mortality, okay. Rural dwelling, okay. Right? So I would say that Nigeria is a little bit just fractionally better than this, but you get the whole point of it. 200 years ago, 150 years ago, America, the United States, the great United States of America was like a third world country. But something began to happen. Again, please, I need your attention. Something began to happen. But before we look at what was happening, guys, the entire world, it wasn't just America, as you can see on your screen. The entire world was poor. Again, the entire world has been poor or was poor for most part of human history until about 200 years ago when something radical began to happen across the globe. Before 200 years ago, in economic terms, using the language of economics, global GDP was flat. Everybody was broke and poor, and only the the kings, the rulers, were living a slightly better life, right? This was before 200 years ago. So what happened 200 years ago? Something began to happen. It's called the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution. But if you can see on your screen again, the entire world right now, when it comes to ideas and innovation and entrepreneurship, is divided into two buckets. There is the inventive society, right? And then there is the innovative society. Yeah, it is so true that before 200 years ago, although the entire world was poor, it doesn't mean that people were not inventing things. People were inventing things. If you check my bio very well, I read a lot of classics, or I enjoy the classics from Homer to Plato to Aristotle to Virgil to Dante to Shakespeare to Faraday to Francis Bacon, all of the great minds of classical history. At least they brought some innovations, or rather some inventions into the world. But despite all the inventions that came into the world, from weapons to wheels to writing technology to even the water mill, gunpowder, printing press, and all of those things, right? They could not birth prosperity for society. They could not birth what Adam Smith called the wealth of nations. Now, the book, The Wealth of Nations, was written in the 1700s, which also tallied with the first great industrial revolution. And what happened 300 years ago? Well, people began to, those great minds who were now inventing or who lived in that era, began to see how to commercialize their invention. There is invention, there is innovation. Invention is not an innovation if it has not been commercialized. An innovation is an invention that has been commercialized. What does it mean to be commercialized? It's been brought into the market, the marketplace. It's been brought into society to trade in society. An invention is a monetized product, right? Is a monetized product, is a monetized service that was brought into the market for customers to buy and partake of. So 200 years ago, 200 years ago, that began to happen. People did not just begin to invent or innovate for those who had money. They began to invent for society, for the ordinary man, for the masses, and then began to earn revenue, make profit out of their invention. That was the beginning of something. That was the beginning of wealth creation. That was the beginning of prosperity. That was the beginning of flourishing of human society. I'll go back again. You can see this graph here, right? So from the 1700s, you see the GDP of the world began to climb a little bit, gradually, right? Began to climb, right? Until, so this curve, the black curve is the United States, and then the the orange curve is China, right? So let's see what happened. Again, remember that people began to build in the 1700s, that's 200 years ago. People began to build, invent, and then produce services to be commercialized in the marketplace for society, and then to earn money from their inventions and their services, right? So again, please, how many of you have seen this documentary, The Men Who Built America? What's the whole point and message of this movie? Again, I really, really love this documentary. If you have not seen this documentary, please go and watch this documentary. The documentary is titled "The Man Who Built America," not the government who built America, not the politicians who built America, not the churches or the political parties that built America. You remember I showed you a graph or some statistics of America during that time when everyone was poor, right? And the statistics was looking like an African country like Nigeria or Ethiopia whatsoever. But some men rose up and began to build America. See, I said that America was built by, it wasn't built by a grand plan from Washington. No, it wasn't the White House that began to build America. No, it was when some men who were entrepreneurs, who were business minded, who had some zest and zeal for business, rose up in America and then positioned themselves in some key sectors of the society, and then began to deliver services in steel, in oil, in railways, in transportation system. That was when America began to be built. These men, if you watch the documentary very well, did set the infrastructure for what the modern prosperity of Africa, of America, was built upon. We're going to see very soon how principles began to play out to the entire world. I'm not going to dwell on it, but again, within that time as well, as these men began to build the infrastructure, right, of modern America, modern prosperous America, the sewing machine Singer was also invented during that time. Let me give you a little bit of juice here. Do you know that before the Singer sewing machine was invented, the average human being on earth had just two pairs of clothes? Yes, the average human being on planet Earth had just two pairs of clothes. To own a cloth back then was to own about 3 to 5 or 7 pairs of clothes back then, you must be an aristocrat. You must be a king. You must be a royal. You were born in a royal family or whatsoever. You had just two pairs of clothes. It took a lot of time to sew a cloth, and then it was pretty expensive as well. But the machine innovation, the sewing machine innovation, brought in some disruption and radical change into the world today. People began to sew clothes, and then that began to open so much of industry. Industrial activities began to take place by virtue of this sewing machine, right? The next is the Ford Model T. Again, remember we're talking about America, how America was being built. So when Ford invented this model, again for the masses, not for the aristocrats, not for the royal guys, things began to happen again. Gas stations came up, industries began to flourish, right? Railways, infrastructure, steel, wood, rubber, gas, so many other industries around this product began to emerge in society. America was there, and America is not built. The next nation you can see for my own study or for our own learning is Singapore. Singapore also now follow that model. You see, this is Singapore in the 90s, and then this is Singapore today. If you've been to Singapore before, you don't want to come back to this country. Yeah, so again, how did Singapore become a flourishing nation today? It also began to open up its industrial sectors in electronics, in petrochemicals, in finance, in logistics and finance, especially, right? Singapore followed that model of the American model of developing your industries, and then your industries open other industries, create jobs, create prosperity for the common man. Another very popular is Dubai. This was Dubai 1994, and then this is Dubai 2024 last year. They also follow that strategy of investing or igniting entrepreneurship in their society, right? And then they were very strategic in the industry they invest in, right? Real estate is very huge there, and the real estate part is for commercial use, right? Um, 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 Dubai today is the Asian hub of finance, of capital, of financial markets, and all of those, even aviation, because it's a connecting hub for so many flights going into the UAE, and all of this. Again, I have to run, so I'm going very fast without going in depth into each of it. The last we have for today that I also really love is South Korea. South Korea was married to North Korea, but they had to split because of the communism differences that they had. So South Korea followed the American model, free market capitalism, and industry as well. They began to open up their industrial base as well. From my study, you can also check your research. They began with their steel industry. From their steel industry, went into other industrial sectors like shipbuilding, electronics, automobile, then ICT as well. Again, I'm moving very fast. Now, this is Nigeria. How many of you like what you can see on your screen? Again, you see the before and after, and this is my vision of Nigeria. This is before, and this is after as well. This is the Nigeria we've built, right? This is present day Nigeria 2025, and I'm imagining in my head, as I imagine a lot, if this is Nigeria today, how can we get Nigeria from third world to first world? I like what I see on my right. This is the Nigeria I want to live in. This is the Nigeria I envisage to build. And this is a Nigeria I believe and point all my sweat and energy and mind and intellect in building this future of Nigeria. So how can we bring this future of Nigeria into the present, right? How can we transform this Nigeria on your left, as you can see, with yellow buses, ugly buildings, and so very, I don't know, how can we transform this into this, right? And my question is, what will be our industrial drivers? What will drive our industries? Let's go. So what would drive Nigeria's industries? I was also able to identify two bucket drivers, and the first one is energy independence and industrial power infrastructure. So what I mean by this is that in our modern times today, if we can get entrepreneurs and business people go into this sector, right, which already exists. People are already doing this in South Korea, in Singapore, in most of those Asian countries that are also emulating the American prosperity model, right? Then things will begin to work. Again, the whole idea is the men who built Nigeria, not the government who built Nigeria. So there must be a mental shift from central government to Nigerians themselves who are very entrepreneurial in their mindset. I will not go into details again about this because I know I'm already done with my time, right? But if we can get this energy independence settled, I mean by Nigerians going into these sectors, inventing and innovating mini grids, and then setting up factories, right, that are powered by not the national grid, but decentralized grids, right? And then also inventing and monetizing other sources of energy as well. What's going to happen? What's going to be the transformative impact? Again, there's going to be stable energy, and that stable energy should translate into factories running 24 hours a day, right? Like you have in China, like you have in Japan as well. Things will begin to change in this country. The next bucket, industrial driver, I was looking at is manufacturing, but with regards to value addition. And in that, there is the agro sector. I believe that we truly have a huge potential there. In fact, Nigeria should be the industrial or the agricultural hub of the world where our cocoas are translated, manufactured into chocolate. We should be the highest exporters of chocolate in the world, right? Currently, we are the highest producers of cassava in the world. Okay, go do your research. That's very true. Nigeria today is the highest producer of cassava. But what do we do with them? We consume them raw. Like I don't know, we enjoy cassava. So if we can get into if we can get entrepreneurs or Nigerians begin to think how to add value into cassava, producing bioethanol, right? That will be very good. It will be a very great product to export to the rest of the world. And that will earn us a lot of prosperity. There's palm as well, there is cotton, and there are many other things again, right? So the transformative impact would be that our exports will rise and there will be a lot of jobs available for our people that they do not need to jump back to the Western world to get good jobs and live decent lives. There's a model for this already, like I said, Singapore and South Korea. All right. So I'm not sure. Should I go into this? Because I wanted to go into the meat of the matter, which is to give everybody a framework that everybody hearing my voice today can go back to their homes, to their neighborhoods, to their schools, wherever you are from, and begin to apply these ideas and generate great solutions for us today. Please, how many time do I have left? Oh, 5 minutes more. All right, so I think we can do the minutes. Let me see. Anyway, so we would have taken this as an exercise, but let me just read it. If you could redesign anything in Nigeria from everyday annoyances to big systemic problem, what would that be and why? Again, I would have loved to hear from you, but since there's no time, I'll just move forward. So the usual question is that, hey, what you've identified, are you solving the right problem or are you solving the problem right? Are you solving the right problem or are you solving the problem right? It's a question for you to reflect. And this is the right way to, on your screen, there's a case study that was put there. This is from Harvard, okay? This is from Harvard University. So it's very top notch. It's called the elevator problem. Please look at this very well and pay attention to what is on your screen. The first problem is, hey, the elevator is too slow. Just imagine you go into an elevator and then you are experiencing this slowness of this elevator. And then you began to look for solutions. So, okay, what might the solution be to this slow elevator, right? And there are three that were suggested there. Install a new lift. Okay, yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. If the elevator is too slow, it makes sense to just remove it and bring a new lift that will be faster. Makes a lot of sense. The second is, upgrade the motor. Okay, so that also makes sense because perhaps the motor of this old elevator is weak, and if we could replace the motor with a newer one, perhaps it will be faster. And then the third solution to this slow elevator is improve the algorithm, right? And improving the algorithm, okay, yeah, that might also work. Perhaps the algorithm right now is so weak, or maybe it's outdated or obsolete. So if we could upgrade the algorithm, then perhaps the elevator will be faster. But guess what? There is a second approach to this problem and solution as well. It begins with reframing the problem. Again, first is the elevator is too slow. But see the reframing of the problem. The wait is annoying, right? And when the wait is annoying, what kind of solutions would you begin to think about? The solutions were also now reframed, as you can see on your screen. If the wait is annoying, then make the wait feel shorter. So how do you make the wait feel shorter? One, install mirrors. Now imagine, truly, you go into so many elevators today, and you can see mirrors inside. So what happens? We go into a mirror. Sorry, you go into an elevator, especially for ladies. I'm so sorry. You see them taking selfies inside, especially when they are alone or with their friends. They're taking selfies inside the elevator before they know they are on the floor they're going to. Wow. Okay, the elevator isn't annoying anymore, or it's not too slow anymore. The other is playing music. Yeah, you go to a lot of modern elevators today. You hear music from the rooftop. They're playing music. You're shaking your head. It's entering you before you know you're in your floor. Oh wow, the wait is not annoying. The elevator is not too slow. Then the third is installing hand sanitizer. This is a recent innovation that was added, especially post-COVID. Right, you go into elevators and you see a hand sanitizer. By the time you rub your hand and then begin to feel yourself, you're in your floor already. Guys, between these two, which is more innovative? Which of these two exercises do you think is more creative and innovative? Joseph says the reframing system. Brilliant. Great. I also agree with that. The reframing system. Right. So, what exactly is this? What did you just see? In the world of innovation, in the world of industry, in the world of economics, in the world of technology, what you just saw is called human-centered design. Again, I usually go to places. I go to places to road shows to innovation ecosystems and entrepreneurial ecosystem to engage people on practical human-centered design. So I wouldn't be going deep here because I have just 1 minute. But these 4 definitions, just take this in your mind and then run with it, please. This will change your life. It will change the way you think. It will make you more creative out there. Number one, human-centered design is a creative approach to problem solving. Again, human-centered design is what? A creative approach to problem solving. Like as you can see, as someone just said, the reframing is more creative. Okay, so human-centered design is a creative approach. Secondly, human-centered design is a mindset that starts with the people you're designing for and ends with new solutions that are tailor-made to suit the need of the people you're designing for. As you can see, right, in the first problem, the framing of the first problem is focused on the elevator. You see, the elevator is too slow. This mindset, right, is object-centric, whereas the reframing of the problem is human-centric. The wait right now, you see, the wait is annoying. It deals with the experience of the person experiencing it. And the old way is focused on the item, the object. Again, this is a Harvard University study and it's accepted all over the world. Again, this is the principle that is betting innovation and ideas across modern economies right now, from the West to Asia to China to everywhere. The moment, friends, guys, the moment you are able to, again, this is it's a mindset shift, right? It's a paradigm shifting experience that you must have. The moment you are able to shift your mind and your thinking away from the object to the person, from that moment, new ideas will begin to spring up in your mind. New ideas will begin to pop up, actually. And just try it after this session today. Just try it. Or from tomorrow, when you go to work tomorrow or whatsoever, just try in every situation, in every problem you're trying to solve. Please just move away from the object to the person experiencing it. Reframe the problem to be centered on the person and then begin to generate solutions based on that. You will see that your creativity will shoot up to the roof. Okay. Number three, human-centered design is the process that facilitates the bringing together of different types of expertise. What this one says is that, let's say the 23 people here, right? Human-centered design tries to squeeze our cumulative wisdom, right? Tries to squeeze idea from each of the 23 people present in here, and then um and then get every one of us to look at a problem, right? And then again, our looking at the problem, in our looking at the problem, there is no wrong idea or there is no wrong answer, right? The interest or the spirit of human-centered design is to be able to milk the perspective, the unique wisdom and insight from every brain, and then put them together to form something quite very unique that would be superior to a single person trying to solve it. That's the best way to put it. And lastly, human-centered design is a set of skills that allow one to move quickly from thinking to creating. Again, please go back and study this. This purpose of my presentation is just to stir your interest and curiosity so that you can delve more into this concept. And this is my last slide, right? So how do you now go from idea to the market? How do you now go through the entire process of, hey, getting an idea and then bringing it into the market, commercializing it, and then generating something that would be very, very impactful for society, creating wealth, adding to our GDP, and then helping society to flourish, right? Number one, again, like it's a human-centered design principle, empathize. There are 5 frameworks, 5 frame steps. Number one, empathize. This empathy has to do with having or developing a very, very deep understanding of the problem you're trying to solve, right? Again, remember the reframing technique. Don't focus on the object, focus on the people or the person experiencing it. In that way, your understanding of the problem deepens the more. Number 2 is to truly define the problem, right? And then number 3 is to begin to ideate, right? Come up with different kind of solutions, brainstorm, right? And then when you have the brainstorm, at least, for instance, now let me give an example. Well, using the just general, for every problem you're trying to solve, don't just generate one problem solution. Okay, it will constrain your ideas and also your creativity. Try to generate at least 20 solutions. Yeah, just right next tomorrow when you resume work tomorrow, from tomorrow or wherever, when you go back to your homes or your workplaces, whatever, for whatever single problem you're trying to solve, do not generate just one solution. Generate 20, right? Then analyze the 20 to achieve the best, right? When you achieve the best, again, back to what we're discussing right now, get that one solution, and then you prototype it, you design it, right? And then you take it into the market to test in a minimum viable market. You're carrying your minimum viable product into the minimum viable market within your larger market, for testing. So this is the entire process, right? Again, you empathize, you understand, have a deep understanding of the problem you're trying to solve. Then you find the problem very clearly, and then you begin to ideate, generate a lot of ideas. Then you pick up the best idea, and then you prototype the idea, and then you launch the idea into the market. All right, so in closing, what does all of these things mean? What does it mean for you, for Nigeria, for the future? This is your role. Number one, let us please prioritize market creating innovations, right? Like we see, or like we saw 200 years ago with those men in America trying to play in the steel industry, in oil, in finance, um, in the marketplace, right? And also with the invention of the Singer sewing machine and the Model T car, all of those, please support. May we all prioritize market creating innovation, because that is the only path to prosperity. China has proved it, Japan has proved it, South Korea has proved it. Number 2, support entrepreneurs, building for the many. Please, if you're a worker or if you're an employee, please go and support your employers from tomorrow. Do not just go there hustling for your daily 2K. No, please stop that. From tomorrow, go with the spirit of an entrepreneur, right? Go and ask yourself, how many new ideas can I bring into this company? How many new ideas can I bring into this company? What value am I bringing into this company? Am I going there just to earn my daily 2K? No, we want to have meaningful life. We want to have meaningful work. We want to have missions-oriented employment, right? Go into your workplaces from tomorrow with a new spirit, saying that, hey, we are working towards a building of our nation. We're trying to transform Nigeria from third world into first world. Since I do not have the capacity to go into the market to open my own business or to create idea, right? I'm working for an entrepreneur, a business person. That means I must support that person. So again, please go in there with a new spirit, generate ideas using human-centered design, right? Come up with new ideas and solutions in your place of work every month. That should be your priority for the rest of your life, right? Coming up with new ideas and supporting entrepreneurs. Number three, enable scalable business models that unlock jobs. For entrepreneurs in here, please, we cannot just invent or innovate on new products alone. No, China is proving it right now. Different kind of models, new business models are being invented, right? Temu is there. Temu has taken over the world, the world of commerce, with their new business model that has eating up the entire world of e-commerce. And Nigerians love it so much, right? And they don't have two brains. They don't have two brains. We need to innovate. Number four, so we use our prosperity now to drive governance and governance reform. This is global. This is historical. This is exactly what happened in the US and also in the Western world as those guys began to build inventions and innovations for the marketplace. And as citizens began to prosper, they took their wealth, right, and began to push for government reforms and strengthen their own government. In our own Nigerian setting, it is said that politicians have weaponized poverty. So this is the cure of it. Innovation, entrepreneurship. By the time we are able to get that sorted out and people have money in their hands, they are wealthy, they will not be moved by peanuts or palliative from politicians. No, we are now strong enough to hold government accountable. So, friend, Nigeria will prosper. Nigeria will prosper. And we can take our country from where it is right now
Amen.
to the great future that we desire.
Thank you very
Thank you so
much,
much,
sir.
Peter, and thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you so much, Mr. GB. Thank you for motivating and inspiring us. There's so much to unpack there, all you have shared. But time is failing us. And so we'll move on to the next speaker for the day. Please, Mr. GB has said, Lord, if you have any question, hold it with one of your fingers or one of your hand. Hold it tight. Don't let it slip away from you. And then you can ask your questions, get clarity, or even give your observations later on after the speakers are done with their session. We now want to move to the second speaker of the day. We have Mrs. Olamide Efosa Austin. A round of applause, please. Olamide Efosa Austin is an award-winning leader in technology and energy. She's a recognized leader for her effort in driving systemic changes across emerging markets with over a decade of experience in field engineering, ESG innovation, and digital equity. She has spearheaded high-impact initiatives on 5 continents. Awesome. As the director of Tech for Good Africa, she leads a transformative movement aimed at empowering over 100,000 individuals annually in more than 55 countries, focusing on inclusive access to tech education and digital skills for underserved communities, including rural women and marginalized populations. In her current role to be precise, as lead for business performance and KPIs at NNPC, she promotes tech-enabled operational excellence. Her previous experiences as a senior field engineer at SLB involved delivering innovative, well-optimized solutions across over 100 oil wells globally. A passionate advocate for just energy transitions, she is also a future energy leader at the World Energy Council and co-founder of Storytellers NG, a brand that is dedicated to shaping identity and learning for children across Africa. Olamide is refining leadership at the intersection of technology, inclusion, and global impact. A round of applause for Olamide. She will be speaking on a very key topic that does not get, better and clear, permit me for using that word, clear clarity among young Nigerians. I hope she does justice to it. Please, Olamide, the floor is yours. You can proceed to share the screen and tell us about the reason why you are so passionate about the idea of policies, what it means, and why young Nigerians must understand it, and most importantly, be the drivers of all you will have to share with us. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Awesome. Good evening, everyone. I like to say that the best way to predict the future is to create it. And incidentally, we've had a bit of time situation now because my partner is also here and he also has a session that's currently on. So there's that double session going on, but we will talk about policies. And when I spoke with Mr. Peter earlier this week, I couldn't hide how I'd had to ask him, did he have a conversation with another spirit different from the physical interactions? Because speaking on policy was something I started to deliberate on just a couple of months ago and ask the questions, where are the policies in Nigeria? And I want to ask everyone as well, where are the policies in Nigeria? And I want us to answer that question in the chat right now. Do you know the policies that guide Nigeria as a nation? In the Constitution, Daniel thinks it's in the Constitution. Samantha doesn't know. Tolu doesn't know as well. Awesome. And you are not wrong, because the question really that we should all be asking is, where are the policies in Nigeria? But I'll run quickly today as to why these policies matter. And what you don't know is that as much as we say we're about 200 million people, the truth is about 65% of the countries in the world are actually suffering from similar challenges like Nigeria, where you readily don't have access to your policies as a nation. And 65% of those, about 80%, are African nations who statistically don't have access to the policies in their nation. What you also might not know is that, yes, policies shape economic growth, innovation, social justice. But what we found in the US, and I imagine some of us saw it, right, is that you can't be a US citizen by an H-1B visa anymore with just $10,000. So my friend of about 20 something years is in the US, and she had called sometime in August, a full-on crying session. Her H-1B visa was denied, and she was at the time crying over $10,000. In less than 2 months, now she has to grapple with needing to pay $100,000. Guess what? Our entire per annum is not even $100,000. That is how much one policy can shift things. The standards we're also living by in Nigeria, as well as in other nations, are also driven by policies. So if anyone lives in Lagos in the chat, if you can remember this Fashola time where we had seatbelt issues, and then if you're not on your seatbelt, that's the end. What we've seen with a policy as little as that is that statistically, less than 20 years after that policy was aggressively driven, according to the statistics publicly available, as much as 85% of Nigerians who are in Lagos are actually compliant with the seatbelt policy, even though the penalty is not as grievous as what it used to be. What does that say to us about policy? It means that policy guides our lives, it guides our way of thinking, it guides our way of being. The kinds of food that you eat is even, I would say, guided by cultural policy, if you would put it that way. Yesterday at brunch, my partner and I were sitting, and his face went, and I'm like, sorry, what's going on? And it's like, I'm like, sorry, what is going on? And just across from the table, you could see this Indian man eating amala with beans. So amala is a Yoruba meal. Typically, it's a swallow, so you should take it with soup. But he was eating it with beans completely. And he had to even motion to someone because he couldn't think. He's like, is this even normal? So there are the unspoken policies which are cultural that you find in something as little as food. Now, when we get into the more serious aspects, which is what you can see on your screen right now, the rate of unemployment in Nigeria is what you're looking at in the first two graphs. And as of January 2024, compared to what it used to be some 15 years ago, right? The rate of unemployment is reported as 10%, which in actual fact isn't the truth, by the way. The only reason it changed to 10% is because a policy came out that was counting, even if you worked 1 hour a day, even if you worked unpaid as employment. Whilst it's a stark difference from what you see in like January 2020, which is showing unemployment at about 50%, which today is actually a more accurate representation of where we are. Now, you may think, how does this even change anything? When a country reports, for instance, that their unemployment levels are barely 10%, the kind of aids, in a sense, the kind of support, in a sense, that can be attracted are significantly different, except that there are then provisions made in the law to further explicitly explain what is referred to as unemployment. So 3 things from that. And again, I've spent quite a bit of time giving a soft landing, but I want us to leave today's session with 2 things. I'd want you to leave with a voice, and I'd want you to leave with a pulse. So by pulse, I'm referring first to P, which is policy, O, which is ownership, L, which is leadership, and S, which is sustainability. So you're leaving a voice and a pulse. Policies, ownership, leadership, and sustainability. So far what taking us through is to see how one policy or 2 policies by anyone can change that. What you then see on the right is the rate of emigration in Nigeria, which are the attendant results of policies that haven't necessarily served us. So if you've ever considered leaving Nigeria, I want you to just type Jackba. If you've ever considered leaving Nigeria, just type Jackba in the chat. For context, I'm one of 3. Both my siblings are out of the country. My partner is one of 4. 2 of his siblings are out of the country, and that's pretty much what we see happening in Nigeria in every average family today. Now, we've talked about what these policies have, what current policies have given to us as a nation. What policies should we then know as Nigerians, every young person? And to that, I would say, know the economic and technological policies, environmental and sustainability policies. And this is speaking to the climate action, the resource use. We have lithium, we have what we call the critical earth materials, which in the US, they actually built out an entire state and said that, you know what, we're going to give you all of this land, just keep exploring. Because of all the gadgets we use today, so you probably have heard of cobalt being used in the iPhones you're holding, you've heard of the chips, and of all of these critical earth materials that we use now for building out our chips, building out our phones, about 97% of them are domiciled in just 3 countries. Now, China has a policy that restricts them from exporting their raw materials. So you see a lot of phones, even my iPhone is made in China for the US. So when you keep seeing the running battle between US and China can confidently say, US, we slam you with additional taxes as well. You want to slam us with import taxes. Let's see what you're going to do without us. So they've carved out policies around their environment, around their technology. Drop down to AI in Africa. The question is, what policies do we have? And that's an opportunity, right? So policies alone are not enough. what we need to do is start to think years ahead. So if you're thinking around the economic policies, you're thinking investment. For instance, the new tax laws, some people are talking about it. What some people also don't know is that it doesn't even affect everybody. Do you see? So entrepreneurship, general taxation, these are the things you find in the economic policies. And for environmental, I've talked about that. Social policies are around education, health, equality. For governance and accountability, that is the transparency where you find your constitution and institutions. And with this, it is then expedient. And I'm not going to say that I have the answers at this bucket. My partner is currently working on an app called Civic Africa, where you can actually find these policies, right? So, which was why I was saying this is such a timely message because I myself had been digging for a couple of months. And if anyone on here is has found access and is happy to share, please share with us because we know what the buckets are. The question is, are they accurate? Are they timely for us? Which leads me naturally to the opportunity we have for transformation. I've probably seen the most amount of young people in my lifetime in Nigeria, Africa, and we have energy for days. And when other countries, actually, I think it's something we can do real quick. If you think about Italy and what they export, what comes to your mind? If you think about Italy and what they export, what comes to mind? If you think about Germany and what they export, what comes to your mind? Okay, so I see shoes. Yeah, so when I think Italy, I think fine leather, like really amazing leather. Okay, Samantha thinks rice, Italian rice like basmati. Peter thinks cars, olive oil. Yes, Samantha, shoes. Italy wine. They have some of the finest. Germany thinks cars and machinery. Samantha thinks shoes again, Germany cars. So when you think about Nigeria, what comes to your mind? Nigeria crude oil, Samantha, believe. Music, that's amazing. Prince, Jaffa, Coco. Yes. So, yes, music, and you find Nigeria music anywhere and almost everywhere in the world today, right? And that, yes, it's a brain drain, but if we play it right, we're exporting our human resources. We're exporting. The only thing is we don't have the right policies around it. If we treat our export, if we treat our people as export, then we should have things in place like tax that come back into Nigeria. So if you're in that country, because they didn't raise them for you, most people who have emigrated, even from that chart, emigrated at a level where Nigeria, whatever investment, even if it's the ancestral ones, Nigeria invested in these people before they were sent out. So we should have a policy like that, where whatever you're earning in the United States or America or Canada, where you are, there's a tax or a portion of that tax is coming back into Nigeria because you are export. That's part of what we're exporting, right? And the opportunity we also have, pretty much like I've said around AI, is to write policies that attract capital. So the good thing is that we're green, and that's why a lot of these presentations back end has been green. It's like we have the opportunity to plant afresh. We also can have a global innovation and reforms from an African lens, which is our own lens, right? We can tell the story from our own way of telling it. And I'm on my last two stretches now, which is how young Nigerians can lead now. And if you see this, what I would call like a pie chart, you'd see that the biggest percentage is us learning, right? And just before leading. So if you'd follow it this way, learn what the policies, the ones we can find, learn what goes into budgeting. I'd been a part of a budget exercise in the last 14 days, and I can tell you for free that it's a lot of work. So you don't need to do everything. You can just carve out your own niche and explore that, the energy, the tech, and then lead as well. Wherever you find yourself, you can lead even in your organization, right? And you can say, let's drive sustainability. You can come up with an innovation to do that, and then advocate, be vocal. What we're on now, someone leaves this place and is thinking, okay, I'm going to talk just one thing, even if that's what I'm going to say. I'm going to speak my truth, even if my voice shakes. And then building that personal leadership capacity daily, which in turn helps you build your innovation. And we're going to be concluding, and if you can see this chart on the right, it shows us so many people. I was tempted to count each of the icons, and I feel like because it's Sunday, so we're not very intense, I would want us to count how many icons you can see on this chart. Okay, so we have 70. Someone has seen 200 icons. Someone has seen 60, 70. How many icons can you see? Paul has seen 70. Samuel has seen 70. Samantha has seen 70. Esther has seen 70. What this exercise leads us to is absolutely nothing related to the core of what we're discussing today, but it's to say that each person, regardless of your color, you have a voice and it's essential to use it. And voice is an acronym for values. So to even build any policy or participate, it is important that you have your own value as a person unshaken, which stems from what I've also put just at the top. Integrity is doing the right thing always. So there are times where, I mean, literally, I gave that example because there are times, you aspire to refire, but just having the value of truth and integrity to say, this isn't we're not doing rocket science. What we're just doing here is something easy. Because we've not been taught the power of authenticity, a lot of times we shy away from it. But I want to leave us with first V, which is values. The second is O, which is ownership. And the first speaker spoke into that a lot, that the next generation will not be built by government, it will be built by you and I. I is innovation. And on innovation, I'd want to, and if Mr. Peter is able to share this, there's actually the science of innovation, because some of the policies we have currently are obsolete. When you're looking at what is attendant or what is available, it's not relatable to us today. Then C is courage, collaboration, and care. It would require a lot of courage for us to say we want to go down the rabbit hole of where the policies are and we want to change it. One person also cannot make it happen. So it's essential that we all collaborate together. So it's not a Mr. Peter agenda, it's not an Erica's agenda, it's a collaborative effort. And C is care. It's important that we care for the nation that we have. And then E is execution. We can write the finest of policies, idea the best of ideas. If we never execute it, then it's not made a difference. And with that, you have a voice, value, ownership, innovation, courage, collaboration, and care, and then execution. And finally, progress is impossible without change. The policies of the future entirely depend on you and I. So it's important that we invest in policy exploration, commit to the data that's required for change, and wherever you are right now, transform it. If you're volunteering, transform it. And on policy as well, there's a school called the School of Politics, Policy and Governance, SPPG. You can explore applying. It's a 12-month long program. Explore applying for that and really delve in and make a difference. So I thank you for kicking it with us, kicking it with me as well, especially for a Sunday night. And I will see you on the next session. Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful. A round of applause, please. Thank you very much, Olamide. Thank you so much. A lot has been said today. I hope we are all taking notes, especially about the acronyms or the initials she gave to us. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Olamide. Thank you so much. Well, once again, without much ado, we would like to go to our last and final speaker. But before that, please just remember the things, the acronyms that Olamide spelled out for us. I'll be asking on them. Perhaps the $100 that GB was talking about, maybe this is the time that someone would will win it. Well, we're still on the call and we're discussing Nigeria 65, ideas, policies, and passion for the future. We want to thank the first and second speaker, GB and Olamide, for doing justice to the topic and for being very considerate to take us through the whole journey. And thanks to everyone on the call for your patience. We have come to the final last speaker for the day before we can say we want to wrap it up with the questions and then the comment session. So please, ladies and gentlemen, our final speaker for the day is Samuel C. Chukwu. Samuel Chukwu is a prolific speaker, mentor, lawyer, and thought leader devoted to empowering young Africans to become global giants through their talent in an ever-evolving technological landscape. With over 10 years of experience in public speaking, strategic communication, consulting, law, and human capital development, is known for his impactful method of impacting value. Samuel has represented Nigeria on prestigious international platforms, including the ECOWAS Youths for Peace Summit in 2024, the International Client Counseling Competition in 2015, and the African rounds of the International Humanitarian Law Competition in 2012, where he emerged as one of the top orators. As the Chief Executive Officer of the Logistics Mentoring Community, Samuel mentors law students across Africa, currently reaching over 1,000 members. He has delivered keynote speeches and facilitated training sessions for various organizations, including the Federal Ministry of Youth and the Nigerian Bar Association's Young Lawyers Forum, amongst many others. A regular guest on television and radio, he shares insights on youth development and national issues. In his spare time, he enjoys reading biographies, playing guitar, engaging in spoken word poetry, and taking contemplative walks. And for our final session, Mr. Samuel will be speaking on purpose, patriotism, and possibilities to wrap up and cap everything that GB and Olamide has shared through us today. Mr. Samuel, can we hear you? The call. It's a pleasure to have you on call, sir. The floor is yours, sir.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I want to be sure you can hear me. And I think, Peter,
Loud and clear, sir.
Yes, I think you're very apt when you said you want to hear me, and that's because I crave our collective indulgences that you won't see me today, but you would most definitely hear me. Right.
Very well. We'll make you with that.
Kudos. Yes, please. You permit me, and I would speak from my heart. Olamide and Tolu had very wonderful slides, really very beautiful slides. I must say, it was very easy to follow them. And so I would say they've done the presentations on my behalf. So permit me to adopt all they said, and most importantly, the beauty in their slides. Secondly, I want to assure everyone that you may not see my face, but be rest assured that I'm a very handsome man, as you can see on the picture there. So even if you don't see my face, you just see that gentleman over there, and that is me. I adopt that picture as a perfect representation of what I look like at the moment. There's no misrepresentation. So that said,
and I second the motion since I've seen
you do.
So I'm on evidence to that.
I'm glad. I'm glad. I can see some of my people here. I can see Samantha. Oh, blessing. You're all welcome. You're all welcome. And once more, can we put our hands together with our emojis for the previous speakers? I think even if I don't speak tonight, they've done justice to the topic. Really, the various topics. Speaking about the areas of policy, and I liked how Tolu just laid a very wonderful foundation by showing us the fact that nations can succeed within a generation. One of the examples I like to cite is the example of Rwanda. It is true that most NGOs, international NGOs, do not like to give Kagame his credit because, they believe that his government is autocratic, in quote. But one thing that they cannot deny is the fact that leadership can transform a nation within a generation. So, as we speak, if anything strikes you, you can put it in the comment, but most importantly, you can also take notes. So a nation can be transformed within a generation. When the example of Singapore was given, Lee Kuan Yew, the story of Singapore is very funny. And that's because unlike other nations that fought for independence, Singapore did not want to leave Malaysia. It's funny. Malaysia told Singapore, you know what, you guys have to go. And Lee Kuan Yew, that is the prime minister who has critical global acclaim, was crying on national television. But what did he do after crying? He wiped his tears and got to work. We're not saying, I'm going to speak about patriotism, and we're not saying we should not shed tears. Like I would always say, I'm not here for blind optimism. I'm here for what I would call pragmatic patriotism. Pragmatic in the sense that we have to look at what is on the ground and see how we can make it make sense. So let me start with a very short story. I used to be a very, very unrepentant patriotic Nigerian until when I did my NYSC. I'm still a patriotic Nigerian. It's just that I'm not as unrepentant as I used to be. And then I became the CDS president of Legal Aid CDS. That's the one. I know the one in Abuja it's very large because we have a lot of lawyers in Abuja, and so we're to have the election. That's a presidential election, and with my patriotism, I inspired by CDS. Let us go and serve Nigeria, only for me to discover that Nigeria did not have plans for us as core members. We literally slept on the floor, and I was saying, wait. What kind of nation would send its young people to a treacherous terrain such as politics and not even provide the basic form of accommodation for them? I started to think. Fast forward to the year 2020, I was done with service a long time before then. And then those of us who were in Nigeria, you remember the NSAS protest. And I won't lie to you, my friends. The 20th of October, 2020, was a defining moment for me because it shook me to my very bones. And it got me rethinking that if I am to make Nigeria work, I must come from a place of knowledge, not from a place of fantasy, not from a place of what Martin Luther King Jr. would call the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. It must come from a place of pragmatics. Look at pragmatism, look at the numbers, look at what is obtainable. That said, my topic, which I was saying in very, very, very few words, is rethinking Nigeria, right? I want us to look at purpose, patriotism, and possibilities. So I added something, rethinking Nigeria. We have to rethink what is Nigeria. And I'm not going to give us a historical background. I think our current affairs back in school did justice to that by telling us how Nigeria was amalgamated. But one thing we should know is that just like most African countries, Nigeria emerged from an economic benefit standpoint of our colonial masters. If you didn't know that before, you know that today. Olamide works with the NMPC, and I know she knows very well that Oloibiri, the name Oloibiri, would go down in history, not just in Nigeria, but in Africa, as being the eureka moment for not only the petroleum industry, but the shift from an agrarian society. Before the first oil well was sunk in Oloibiri, Nigeria was primarily an agrarian society. You hear of the granite pyramids in the north. You would hear of the cocoa farms. In fact, Cocoa House, which was the tallest building in Nigeria, was built from proceeds from cocoa by the then Western regional government. You would hear of the oil palm in the east. In fact, Nigeria had more oil palm than the world's current producer of oil palm, which is Malaysia. Guess where they got their seedlings from? From Nigeria. And that's why many people think oil, they call it the curse of the black gold. But trust me, in typical Nigerian fashion, give me the black gold. Don't worry about the cost. Just give me the black gold, I'll collect it. So that said, we need to understand that Nigeria was amalgamated for economic and political convenience. That was the reason why. Why am I going to the past a bit? I want to quote George Santayana, the philosopher, who once said that those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it. Those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it. However, we must not put our head down in the sand and play the ostrich or keep on looking back, because you cannot drive forward while looking at the rear mirror. So I'm not taking us down history to talk about the injustice of 1914, as some people will say, or to quote the words of the sage Obafemi Awolowo when he said Nigeria is a mere geographical expression. You know, the thing about history is people pick the parts that favor them to drive home their point. The reason why I'm taking us back to history is to do what Bob Marley has said, that if you do not know your past, it will be most difficult to chart a future. So I want to situate this conversation within the context of what has happened, so that our generation, when I say our generation, this is not time for the generational wars, whether you are Gen Y and Gen, okay, I'm not sure there's any Gen Y, millennials are Gen Y. So whether you're Gen Y, that is millennial, whether you're Gen Z or Gen Alpha, we'll sheath our swords tonight and see how we can build a better Nigeria. So yes, thank you, Blessing. Those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it. So one thing I want us to know, my friends, is that there are 3 things I would diagnose as the problem Nigeria is facing today. The beautiful thing about the problem of Nigeria is that when you ask people, Nigerians are not in short supply of what they think the problem is. Take a stroll along the streets of Abuja. You see those gentlemen arguing at newspaper stands. Very intellectual and intelligent arguments about the problem of Nigeria. Enter into a cab and ask the taxi man, what do you think the problem of Nigeria is? You would hear brilliantly marshaled arguments, quoting historical sources as well as religious texts as to what they think the problem of Nigeria is. But where we all disagree is the solution. But before I delve into the solution, which is where I will end my discourse tonight, let us see what the problem, or let us try to see what the problem of Nigeria might be. One of it is weak systems and institutional decay. The concept of the strong man, in quote, is one of the banes of the African political situation. We believe that we should have a benevolent dictator. I remember in 2011, I was in the university. In 2011, I was reading law in the university. And then that was when Buhari lost. The last election he lost to Goodluck Jonathan before he won in President Buhari, I mean. And then I would never forget, I was on a bike. And the bike man he was an Igbo man, interestingly. And he was angry. He said, I wish, let me quote him verbatim. I wish, say, Buhari win this election. If do us what you do for 1984, war against indiscipline. We love to swim in the rivers of nostalgia. Have you noticed that when dollar was 197, I'm talking of 2015, Nigerians were shouting, occupy Nigeria. Now that is 1,000. What is the price of dollar? Those of us that use dollar. 1,000, I think it's 1,000. Okay, of course, official and parallel and black market. Official rate is 1,450 now, but black market is 1,500. Yeah, I think 1,500, they've rounded it up and all. Back then, Nigerians were lamenting. I was in law school in 2016. I attended the program by Pastor Nathaniel Bassi. And then he raised the prayer points then in Lagos, in Victoria Island. It was like, let us pray. The dollar has risen to 300 and people are suffering. Whenever I think backwards, I'm like, wow, like the dollar has risen to 300 and people are suffering. Oh my God, take me back to 300. Let me suffer the fate of $300 to $1. I mean, 300 naira to $1, right? So we always see nostalgia as being like the past as being better. And then people like Fela Anik, please give me the second name. Say Anikulapo. Peter, I think you should know this better than me. Fela's the other name, not Agbami, the other one that says that is my
Anikulapo.
Anikulapo. Thank you.
Yeah.
You will see them as prophets. Oh, he saw the future of the Nostradamus of our time in music. Well, without prejudice to Fela's foresight, I want you to know that when you have a dysfunctional system, the musicians of the past become prophets. Why? All they need to do is to sing about a dysfunction that would last from generation to generation, like peak milk back in the days. And then we see them as prophets. It's not that they're being prophetic. They are just stating a problem that has remained. That's it. My name is not Jeremiah, so I'm not here to lament, right? But it's good we situate our conversation within the context of the problems that we face, because we cannot solve the problems, like I said, if we keep playing the ostrich. Exactly, Shalom. Thank you. So the first issue, like I mentioned, Weak systems and institutional decay. What we've noticed is an erosion of our systems bit by bit at different levels. The federal government, we claim the federal government is corrupt. How about the state governments? For those who are conversant to Nigerian politics, you know what security votes are. Yes, there's insecurity. If you want to see the best form of sophisticated corruption, don't look at the federal or state level. Go to the local government. Go to the local government. So part of what I do, besides law, is consulting, training consulting. But in my spare time, I like to do a bit of property law, just to stay in the system. And then some of these area council guys will come and extort. I call that extortion. And because I loved mathematics back in the days, I'll calculate how much are these guys making. And my friends, the figures are astronomical. Weak systems and institutional decay. The second issue Nigerians face, and I don't like to use this issue because that's become cliched. That's become more or less like an anthem for us. Leadership without accountability. Leadership without accountability. Why is leadership a problem? For those who understand Nigeria's history very well, every time a military coup, and let me reduce my voice because, we know that the times we're in are not very safe times. Anytime there is a military coup in Nigeria, there would always be jubilation by the masses because we're expecting a messiah that is dressed in khaki to solve our problems. And people want to cite examples of people like, what was this, our guy from Burkina Faso? Yes, Thomas Sankara, or Samora Machel, or Robert Mugabe. People who said, okay, Mugabe is a very wrong example. Peace be upon him, right? But Mugabe is not the right example. Those who are in economic spheres know why Mugabe cannot be an example, right? I mean, when you have billionaires that cannot buy a loaf of bread, it shows you stuff about his. Yes, Jerry Rollins. You have there's some certain dictators in the past that showed us what they could do, right? But in the Nigerian sphere of things, at a point we're not operating even military rule, we're operating kleptocracy. That said, leadership without accountability is. Have you heard Nigerian leaders say, "I will slap you and nothing will happen"? That is the impunity of leadership. The third issue we face, and permit me not to let the citizens off the hook, because as much as we like to put the blame on the shoulders of leaders, how about followers? It is true that John C. Maxwell will tell us that everything rises and falls on leadership. However, we know that most times followers get the kind of leaders that they deserve. And it's not a cause, it's just a fact. If you think I'm lying, I like to use Abuja as an example. And that's because I've tasted the major cities in the country. And the impunity I see in the capital, I'm not sure you see it in other capitals, really, where Nigerians confidently beat traffic lights in Abuja. Confidently. And anytime it happens, I just shake my head and say, and we say the president is the problem. I won't say he's not the problem. I will only say he's not the only problem. That's it, because our time is almost up. Before I delve into the solution, I want to state, because I'm speaking to young people like myself, that you cannot pour from an empty cup. The mistake most of us make about Nigeria's problems is that we're filled with zeal, but we lack the requisite knowledge, the imperative technical know-how. And what do we have? We have zealots that would get into power and would see that passion is a limited source of fuel to engineer change. Your passion is good, but your passion is not enough. I might sound harsh, but it's the truth. Passion is not enough. Robert Mugabe was passionate about Zimbabwe when he fought the Rhodesian Bush War, the Bush War. But what happened when he got into power? The economics did not add up. People like to quote Muammar Gaddafi as a role model for Africa. And I tell people, those that forget history are condemned to repeat it. If you check out, most of the leaders we had in Africa were merely populist in nature. And that is why once they either left the seat or were taken out involuntarily, you would see that they did not build sustainable institutions. Same thing with people like Mobutu Sese Seko of the Congo. Same thing with people like Laurent Gbagbo of Cote d'Ivoire. I can go on and on as to how this institutional deficit has been the bane of Africa and even Nigeria. But as young Nigerians, we cannot pour from an empty cup. If we must change Nigeria, if we must have that purpose that will build our nation, we must first build our capacities. Pastor Sam Adeyemi calls it personal leadership. A man cannot lead a nation, man and woman then. You cannot lead a nation if you've not learned to lead yourself. Okay? So, one other thing I would like to note, I'm about to delve into solutions now, but just before I delve into solutions, I don't want my solutions to sound very esoteric or above your heads. I want it to be very direct. One thing I would want us to know is this. I've noticed something amongst young people like myself. More often than not, I think was it Tolu that gave us that talk about the brilliant talk about the Industrial Revolution. Charles Schwab, the current president of the World Economic Forum, has rightly stated, and I say rightly, that the world is in its fourth industrial revolution. The world has had more than one industrial revolution. Of course, for good reasons, we refer to the first one, the one that happened in the 18th century, and that's because nothing had happened at that scale at that point in time. But if you look at that, after that time, we've had a lot of revolutions, and we're in the fourth one. We've had the digital revolution, where you had the computer, the personal computer. Now, I want us to see these revolutions as waves. The reason why America is great is because they were able to ride the wave of the revolution that took at that point in time. I'm not talking of Omoh Showere's revolution now, all right? God bless him and all, but that's not the kind of revolution I'm talking about. I'm talking of revolution at an industrial scale. If you look at every form of revolution that's happened in the world, it took nations that understood what was at stake if they hopped on and what is at stake if they did not hop on. And that's why if you look at the history of America, America was a colony. Whenever Nigerians cite colonialism as the reason why we are where we are, I tell them the problem with those kind of stories, the problem with distortions is not that they're totally false, but they are not totally true. That is the problem with distortions of history. So it is true that colonialism is part of what has affected us to an extent, but that is not the whole truth, my friends. That is only a part of the story. And for those who are lawyers here, you know the story of the 5 blind men that went to an elephant. And because they were blind, they asked them, what is an elephant? One touched the tail and says it's a snake. The other one touched the hard skin and says it's the back of a tree. The other one touched the trunk and said it's something long. Each person brought their own perspective, but not the whole picture. My fellow Nigerians, the reason why we're even as young people is that besides these institutional issues that have been mentioned, we who are meant to change the narrative have prioritized environment over education. I laugh. Also, I've traveled. You know that Nigeria does not have a social security system. We don't have social security. If, God forbid, not cater for your own electricity or your own water, you're in trouble. You're in deep soup. Please, pardon my pessimistic tone. I didn't plan this. I didn't plan pessimistic. I promise you, when I enter solution, my optimism will come up. But we do not have a social security system in this part of the world. That was O.Y.O. You're on your own if you do not take personal leadership of your life. So I feel so befuddled when I see Nigerian youths struggle for data, which is not bad by itself. But we struggle for data so that we can watch TikTok videos and just be entertained. And we come up with caveats like, we cannot kill ourselves now. Of course, we know that patriotism has to do with devotion and all, right? So the question is, what can we do? And I'll give us 3 things. 3 things. I've tried to see how I can encapsulate everything I've thought of into 3 angles, right? The first thing we can do is to think in terms of systems. and not sentiments. Think in terms of systems and not sentiments. When the NSAS protest started, I was one of those that told my generation at that point in time that, see, we are, we were at a threshold at that point. It had never happened that the youth, now you've had sporadic and spontaneous protests every now and then, June 12th, ASU strike, Pengasin, when Kensarua was killed, coming down up to different protests occupying Nigeria, but we never had any at the scale of NSAS. And Nigerian youth at that point in time did not understand that opportunities like this do not come all the time. That was a watershed moment in our collective history. Because we didn't think in terms of systems, we let that opportunity slip. Why should we think in terms of systems? So let me use an example that's been in my mind. For the ladies who are here, you're inclined maybe to do, let's assume you're inclined to do a menstrual hygiene project. And you say, okay, what's the first thing that will come to most people's mind is to buy sanitary pad, go and share it to the young girls, take pictures, we're impacting lives. Now, that in itself is not bad, but you're not thinking from a systems perspective. You're focused on the branches. And what happens when you cut only branches? They will grow again. So, for instance, that young girl takes that pad, she uses it, except if it's the reusable one. She uses the pad, and that is all. You have fed her for a day, and that is it. That is not to stop. If you have that in mind, please go ahead. It's better than doing nothing. But a person that thinks in terms of systems would ask, why doesn't this young girl have access to sanitary pad? It is because she does not have money. Why doesn't she have money? Because her parents don't have money. Why don't they have money? You now think backwards and you say, okay, what can we do to ensure that every young girl has a pad? I'm giving you just the crash course in systems thinking. In systems thinking, you do not go to the effects, you go to the cause. And trust me, my friends, we can't solve all causes. But for instance, maybe somewhere, somehow, somebody has been given money for that thing in government. And they are, one of the projects, for those who are familiar with Nigerians' budgets, they are preparing the current budget now. But if you're familiar with Nigeria's budget, you will know that street lights, people use there are a lot of street lights in the budget. Why? Because it's one of the easiest things to pad in the budget. But thinking from a systems perspective, Nigerian youth will now start to tackle institutional issues. What I see now is that we do our lamentation in bits and pieces. Something happens to me, I just go on Twitter and I rant about it, and everybody say, that is it, that is what happened to me, and that's where it stopped. But how about you think about going to the root of the matter? Sometimes it might be a simple protest letter to your local government. We heard, based on the Freedom of Information Act, that so and so was allocated for transformer. We have not seen the transformer. That is thinking in terms of systems. The second thing we can do as young Nigerians is to, now, of course, you have examples like Singapore and Rwanda that taught in systems. That's why it's a crime for those who have been to Kigali, or you cannot say you're Hutu or Tutsi or Twa, and that's because they understand where that led them to 3 decades ago. The second thing we must do as young people, in terms of purpose, patriotism, and possibilities, is to rebuild civic engagement. Now, 2027 is around the corner, and everywhere is buzzing, defections from PDP. The problem we have as Nigerians is that we have played into the gallery of the politicians. They have a very, very unique and sinister way of pulling us into the dancing in the glory of the elephants. As the grass, we're being swayed by their dance, not knowing that that dance is a stampede that will impede our growth. So what happens? When we talk of civic engagement, people only think in terms of election in Nigeria, even lawyers. But permit me, my learned colleagues, we think in terms of elections, election petitions, because of how monetized our society has become. But how about engaging in other areas of accountability, writing to the powers that be, placing demands, civic education, engaging our leaders, demanding for town halls, not a town hall. Okay, if you catch the joke, let me leave it at that. So civic engagement. No, I didn't mention any name. Please, if Peter should be heard liable, and thank God this is his platform. So civic engagement is important. Civic engagement. The third thing Right? Okay, good example. They're not too young to run. That's a very good example of civic engagement. My friend, and I'm very proud to say this, Momoh wrote to me. She's the founder of Gender Mobile, right? And I'm glad to say I was one of those that when it started, I really volunteered. We crisscrossed the Southwest back then and all. She has engaged in a lot of very wonderful initiatives. And as a result, sexual harassment policies have been signed in over 120 institutions, tertiary institutions in the country. You see, that is both civic engagement and systems thinking. I mean, she can take up placards, and we once did that in there's this polytechnic in Ede. That's where the video is from, I guess. And we're like, oh, no to gender, sexual and gender-based violence. That's beautiful. But beyond just cutting the branches, we went to the root. And what is the root? Policy. I'm glad Olamide did a very wonderful work on policy. That was very, very beautiful and innovative. The final thing as young people we must do is that we must learn before we lead. Learn before we lead. And I'm not saying that learning and leading are mutually exclusive options. I'm not speaking in terms of binary options. I'm not speaking like our elders that will say, young man, learn first. No. They can go hand in hand. And that's because at every level of leadership, there's an opportunity to learn. It is said in cliche terms that the biggest room in the world is the room for improvement, right? Or whatever variation of the quote you know. We must learn as young people. Look at history. One of the best skills you would learn is what is known as pattern recognition. And there's nothing new under the sun. What has been would be. There's a reason why the earth rotates in its axis. It also shows us that life is in a constant flux, my friends. I was recently in Towers, NMPC Towers, Block D. I know Olamide knows Block D. Block D houses a special group of people. And whenever I go there, I sit and I just observe. And based on what I know about Nigerian history, I can tell you for fact, the very same issues that Murtala Muhammad in 1976 was shouting about, 1975-76, before he was assassinated, those issues are recurring. So if you're a good student of history, you will know that certain problems that are emergent in Nigeria are systemic. My dear friends, knowledge is the new oil. Of course, that is not to say oil is not, oil is still the mainstay of our economy. But if we could export our knowledge, because trust me, Nigerians are doing great things, from Chimamanda to Philip Emeagwali to Akinwumi Adesina to Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. The list is endless. These guys are doing so well. What does that mean for you and I? It means that our knowledge can be exported. And I'm not just talking of Japan. Technology, the internet is a ground where you can export your knowledge, my friends. Another thing we must do, like I said, is to prioritize learning over entertainment. And last but not the least, to fix a system, you must first understand it. And that is why when you go to the hospital, the first thing the doctor does is to diagnose, do his diagnosis, prognosis before he does his prescription. My fellow youths, what do we say is the problem of Nigeria? And how can we start to tackle it from our own little space? In conclusion, my friends, every generation has an opportunity. I'm a lover of history. I'm a lover of politics. And life has shown me that any generation that changed the narrative, whether it's from Singapore, whether it is Dubai, whether it is Rwanda and all, were people that understood that they were in a pivotal moment in their nation's history. Even our founding fathers, look at Gowon. Yakubu Gowon was 32, 31, 32, and all. Jerry Rawlings, young guys. But it took an understanding that they were the generation that would fix the country. The biggest problem we have in Nigeria, my dear friends, is the despondency of the youth. The fact that the youth are losing hope. And my friends, if we lose hope, then there's no hope for us. We are of all men most miserable. So I throw this challenge to us. Like we said, we're not talking of blind patriotism. We're not talking of a meaningless mantra. We're not talking of changing the national anthem, because changing it does not, for people like us that never knew the old, okay, I knew it from history, but we never sang the old one. The new one, it doesn't really, remember when we were singing Arise to Compassion, with a lot of compassion back in the days and all. But beyond platitudes, Pollyanna, and, their gimmicks, our generation must believe that we are the ones that can change the narrative. But before we talk about changing the narrative, we must first work on ourselves, because we cannot pour from an empty cup. I would like to end with the words of Julius Caesar. Of course, I will not end the way he ended, right? I won't end life the way he ended, but I would like to end with his words. When he crossed the Rubicon, he uttered those words, Veni, Vidi, Vici. He said, I came, I saw, I conquered. It's my hope, desire, and prayer for we young Nigerians haven't listened for this protracted amount of time, that we can, at the end of our stay here as Nigerians, we can say we came to this land, we saw this land, but above all, the land didn't conquer us, we conquered it. Thank you very much for having me, and I hope it was worth your time. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. A round of applause, please. Come on, a round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Samuel. Or, as we like to say in Nigerian colloquialism, Barrister Samuel. Please, let's give him the thumbs up reaction with the Zoom features. Thank you so much to all our speakers. Thank you, GB. Thank you, Olamide. Thank you, Sam. Apologies to the speakers, the time planning didn't go as we expected, but I want to thank you for doing proper justice to your topics, giving us clear insights, deep, interesting facts and figures to enlighten and to motivate us. And if you're on this call as a listener, you joined, you registered, and you are participating, I want you to just give yourself a round of applause, a wonderful, rousing round of applause. You have done so well in being patient, in taking the time to join this call. So please, if you know you have questions, we'll just only take 3 questions, or let me say a mixture of questions and observation, but just 3 persons, so that we'll not waste our time. You have been patient enough. Please, can you just kindly indicate by raise of hands if you have a question or you have a comment, so that you can be unmuted. Please, we want to crave the indulgence of our speakers. Just 3 questions and observation, and we'll call it a day. Apologies that a lot of time has been taken already. So quickly, please. We have Shalom. Okay, Shalom, we will mute you so that you can ask your question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. And thank you for what you've been doing so far through Clariquity. God bless you, sir. I just want to...
Thank you very much.
Sometimes ago, I watched this little video, and in an Indian community, rain was falling. So when the rain was falling, and a tree fell and blocked the road, or like a log of wood, though, not a living tree. So, and everyone was inside his car because the rain was so heavy. And a young boy just ran from the corner of the road, just come and start pushing. Although he is not pushing anything per se, but his hand are lean on it, and the information sense from it is that he was trying to take that log of wood off the road. But in few seconds, people began to pull out to come and join him to really push it out of the road. So I'm trying to raise something here. It's kind of call for attention, trying to solve a problem per se by someone first doing it. So I believe what we sometimes as young people, and I think is a major problem with us young people, we really don't want to start. Wanting to start, want to look like stupid, or even if I did, may not make effort. But that from that short clip, make me understand that when you begin, if there's a sense in it, people will join you and solution will finally be preferred.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you for corroborating all our speakers have said. We taking the initiative. Thank you, Shalom. Since that is not a question, quickly we'll move on to Paul. Perhaps yours is a question or an observation. Please feel free.
All right,
Paul, you can go ahead to unmute.
So my first question, first of all, thank you very much for this webinar. Thank you to all those speakers, and
Thank you too.
God bless you. All right. So my first
And you
question is
too.
as regarding Mr. Samuel. So he said that to change Nigeria, we need knowledge and this sort of pragmatic view. So my first question is that there's a lot of information out there, because this would not be my first time having this sort of passion to want to change Nigeria and all. But my question is, there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of books and podcasts and stuff as regarding Nigeria and history of Nigeria and all. So my first question is, where do we start? Like, what do we do first? What do we like actually, is there like this sort of is there a system you can actually recommend, like, okay, start from here first and then build on that? So that's my first question. And my second question is, he said something that we should think in terms of system, like rather than be sentimental about it, we should actually be systematic about it. Now, when we consider the fact that Nigeria is actually corrupt in totality, that is from head to toe, what if I actually do decide to follow the system, and then the system is actually, based on corruption, actually just, twats the thing? Because one of the reasons why most Nigerian youth are actually, are losing hope is because some of them might actually say they've tried in terms of system, meaning they've tried to, like, be systematic about it, talk to the local government, send letters and stuff like that. But rather than their letter being addressed, their letter will probably just be dropped on the table in front of the secretary, and then there's nothing said about it again. So that's my second question. Like, is there a way to go about it? Because I don't know. That's just my second question. Like,
Thank
I
you
don't
very
know if you
much,
get what I'm saying.
Paul. Yeah.
Right.
Mr. Will you do
Yes,
us the kind honors of
no,
address concern?
honors, and in the spirit of teamwork, I would cede the second question to either Bolu or Olamide. So that, the path to national transformation is one that cannot be done alone. It was John Donne, the Irish writer, that noted Ireland. So I would answer the first question, and then the second
Very
question,
well.
it would be good to invite my co-panelists or co-presenters to also. So,
Mr. Olamide, I will reiterate the question for you, but go on to answer the first question, sir. Thank you.
yeah. So the first question is, where do we start? Permit me to modify that, to note that you started already by being on a think tank such as this. You started. You have indeed. You have. Francis Bacon once said, knowledge is power. But permit me to modify that statement. It is not knowledge per se that is power. Knowledge is potential power. It is knowledge that is applied that makes you powerful. The issue we have is most of our talks of the problems confronting Nigeria are more or less either lamentations or just diagnostic. Diagnosis is only one part of the problem. The treatment, the actions. So even most of our leaders, I've been privileged to work at the three arms of government. Okay, by virtue of being a lawyer and a training consultant, I've done trainings for the Supreme Court, the National Judicial Institute, the ones that train judges. And I've seen where the issues lie. I've also interned at the National Assembly. And I would like to you, my dear friends. It was when I interned at the National Assembly. Most of my colleagues were getting jobs. I said I wasn't going to work there. You know why? I just shook my head and said, if you understood the joke of what is going on, that's why they have time to do the apabio. And, where there's no work, you will see a lot of subplots playing out. Then, of course, I was also privileged to work in the villa during the last administration, very briefly, at a certain point in time. And I can tell us categorically, Nigerian leaders are not as dumb as we think. they're not necessarily dumb. It's just that when you know that leadership is not what brought you there, you will devise every means possible to achieve the sinister motive that brought you there. Trust me, when you see, I once asked the former minister a question. I said, why is it that most Nigerian leaders are wiser with the benefit of hindsight? You notice when they leave power, that is when they start to express such profound wisdom. But while they were in power, it seemed there was a cloud that covered their eyes. What it shows us is that we are not bereft of the ideas. Where we miss it is like Theodore Roosevelt would say, it is not the critical count, not the one that says where the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds will have done them better. The credit belongs to the person. He said man, but of course, the person in the arena whose face is marred by blood, sweat, and tears. There's a book I'm currently reading known as Dictator Land, The Men Who Stole Africa. And you see that it was an irony to discover that Africans, we had oil right under our soil. Well, no pun intended. We had oil under our soil, but it took the so-called colonial masters to come all the way to come and give some of our people a bottle of gin in exchange. Of course, sometimes they also expropriated those lands forcefully and all, simply because we did not know what we had underneath our soil. That is the story of a people that do not have knowledge. I'm talking of, please, I'm not dissing our forefathers. I'm just stating historical facts. So, way forward, you've attended sessions like this. I say this to everyone that's on the call. What are you going to do with the knowledge that you've learned? Or are you just going to say, oh, we had a wonderful session? Start. How did I start my organization? Right? Simple. I noticed that legal education in Nigeria promises a lot but delivers little. For those who know me, I do not hide my thoughts about it. If you've been outside the country, you will know that what we call law in Nigeria is child's play compared to what is going on in advanced jurisdictions. And so I said, you know what? I was tired of complaining. What can I do about it? And so instead of just going to different law faculties and talking, I say, you know what? There are two ways to catch a butterfly. I either go chasing butterflies or I build a garden. And that's why I decided to build a system. And because when a person builds a system, when you say yes, other people can say yes too. So for you, I cannot prescribe a specific action that you can take. But what I can tell you surely is, with all that has been said by each of the speakers, myself inclusive, what step can you take today? And I will end by giving you suggestions, which I mean, you're at liberty to either apply or discard. One suggestion you can do is, because it's hydra-headed, the sector you want to implement, how much do you know about the sector? Go and research about it. The solution you want to propound and propagate, has it been tried before? What were the gaps? And then after all is said and done, the stakeholders, who are the stakeholders, who are the gatekeepers? The problem most youths face is, especially in the civil service, you just enter a place, and I don't mean you now, I mean the collective you now. The you enters into a place and wants to change, but forgetting that, see, there have been powers that be. Office politics is a real thing in Nigeria. Understand who the gatekeepers are, understand who the kingmakers are, and all. But after all is said and done, take action. Take action. So I would leave a bite of the cherry for my other facilitators so they can also learn their thoughts. But I hope that has addressed it to an extent. After all is said and done, understand the system and all, but start to take action in your own little way. Build a system.
Thank you, sir.
It could be and all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Paul, little drops of water, they say, make a mighty ocean. Mrs. Olamide, we have taken quite a lot of time, but we are wrapping up. As you can recall on the second question about system, basically, how can you balance, trying to, if I recall correctly, there's a system on ground that is already lopsided in the country, and you want to basically be like the person swimming against the current. And also not just swimming against the current of the system, bring about a positive change in the system. How do you cope? How do you deal with the whole frustration as you're trying to bring about a positive change to the system? So you create a whole new ecosystem that is better, more positive, and, I'm looking for a better word that will benefit the future to come. I don't know if that encapsulates what Paul asked, but Paul, can you confirm that encapsulates what you asked so that Olamide can address your question? Okay, I think we have lost Paul. But yes, if I recall correctly, that was his question. Olamide, can you help us address that, please?
Okay, so to
Thank
that,
you.
I would say three things. One is the fact that you're already swimming is is already power, right? So maximizing that strength. A phrase I heard once was, if you've killed the cow before, it means you can kill a cow again, right? One of the
First time
challenges
I'm hearing that.
yeah, so breaking the first barrier, it's almost like the force of inertia versus the force that requires to keep an object in motion. The greatest force is usually the one to break. So once you overcome inertia, which means you've taken the first step, it means you can take the next. So one, I would say conviction and taking the first step. If that looks like signing up in an SPPG school, which I'd mentioned, you do that. Second is don't go at it alone. You'd find, even if it's on this call, at least 5 other people as radical as yourself, and for lack of a better word, call it as crazy as yourself, who are ready to go on the journey with you. And the final thing is, and this might not be conventional, but it's to go at it with God, right? What looked unconventional in the Holy Book was marching around the tower for it to come down. So when you get that um insight. So for instance, me taking up this opportunity, I had a conflicting offer in another company that I could have taken, but it was the instruction to go on this path, right? And for you, it might be doing something in your local government. So don't despise it. Already, when if a person feels like they're defeated, they're already defeated. So I'm going to encourage you, that's what I'm going to leave with you, to actually take it on, right? Start where you are, take the first step, which of course Samuel has talked through a lot of them. Second, rally a people. So if there's one person in the House of Assembly who is motioning for a bill, the other people will overpower him. But imagine one person thinks it's crazy enough to say, I'm going to run. Another person thinks it's crazy enough, say, I'm going to run. In no time, we're going to actually upturn that system once we go as a collective mass, which I call the critical minority. And then finally is give it time. So as you're doing everything, doing it with God, give it time and it will yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Olamide. The critical minority. I think we are that critical minority. And if there's anything history has taught me, is that it's not so much the numbers or the volumes or the weights or the size of people that actually determines a revolution. It takes just one consistent person, maybe not in his generation, but a little drop of water in this generation, another water trickling in the next generation, or a little drop of water from one room, another from another room, different collective efforts from different people who form a critical minority can push for a change in ways we do not know. Thank you, Olamide, for all you have said. Now, to cap it all up, I would love to hear a lady's voice. Olamide has been a strong voice on the call today, representing the critical minority. And I would love it to be that we have the ladies. Any lady on the call, please. Just give us, if it's an insight you have to share, if it's a comment, or just a question, or perhaps a vote of thanks. Can we have a lady, please? Quickly, please, as we are about rounding up.
Okay, just to say something, right? While the ladies to also try and just lend my voice to.
Okay.
One thing history has taught us is opportunities are not necessarily given all the time. Sometimes they have to be taken, right? And I say communications perspective and just about what's just played out or what's playing out now. To the ladies, I'm not saying it so you can speak now. I mean, it would be good if you do, but when opportunities like this are brought forth, I've always said you never can tell who is listening. You never can tell. Destiny encounters do not come with a shout. Sometimes they come in still small voices. They come in whispers. Okay. For instance, we were talking about the reserved seats bill, and many people are not happy because they feel it's a form of tokenism that's going on in the legislature. But we're saying, what is the best way the voices of women can be heard is when more women speak. I just read an article and I totally agree. as to the redundancy of having women leaders in political parties. You know why? Because the only thing they see women leaders as good for is tying wrapper and supporting the men's leader. Why can't women leaders take up positions as secretaries, as vice president, or even chairman of those parties? And thank you, Olamide, for holding that torch. And I'm saying this to encourage the women. Please pardon my tone. I don't know. This night I was supposed to come in peace. I don't know why. Maybe it's because of Nigeria I'm sounding this way. But please, please.
The future that we are all desiring. Thank you, everyone, so far for your time on this call. I want to thank GB, who we kindly apologize on his behalf. He had to, quietly exit because of another program that came up. In fact, he is not around. He just had to join in on the call from where he was. And so, thank you very much, GB. In his absence, we are saying thank you. Please, a reaction of round of applause if we can, for his rousing and impressive insights through taking us through a memory lane of how innovation, how entrepreneur and capitalist endeavors have brought positive change, and how young Nigerians can tap, from the lessons in history from how entrepreneurs, innovators, and capitalists have made their societies better. And if you're on this call, you have a business idea, you have a push for something to build a platform, build a product, or whatever it is, I hope all that GB said will motivate you to go out there and give it your best. And don't worry, this session will be available, the recording will be available. We'll share it via our social media platforms so that everyone can replay and then listen once again for, deeper reflection and for future application. And then we want to thank Olamide. Please, a round of applause for Olamide. She has done astoundingly well, taking us through the importance of policies, what they mean. And policies are all around us. They are there, giving us the initials of the pose and how we can apply it, not just as theory, but as something we can hold tangibly. And we can carry that torch and bring about positive implementation in our society, in our own little space, taking ownership of all these things. Thank you very much, Olamide, for being a voice on such critical issues on behalf of the critical minorities. And then thank you so much to Samuel. Samuel is my colleague. I'm a lawyer and he's equally a lawyer. And he was my senior back in school. So we are both alumni of, we are both from the same alumni at the University of Abuja. So, sir, it's an honor to have you on the call. And then thank you for, motivating us on the possibilities that are inherent in us, despite the whole balablu, in quotes, that is around us, and how we must be different from the system that is already defied, corrupted, and messed up. And I hope that we take these lessons and be the real difference and change maker. Then finally, thank you to Shalom for your insights. Thank you to Paul for your questions. And the ladies, I think I will apologize. Maybe they were, because we muted the audience, perhaps that was why they couldn't get to unmute and speak. But for whatever is what, to all the ladies, to all the guys, to all the participants, I say thank you for your time. Olamide, do you have anything to say as we call it a close? Or Sami?
Speak, especially because I'm speaking for an entire what's called a generation at this point.
Yeah. So let's hear it from you, ma'am.
Okay, but this evening was sobering at best. It had been a long day of meetings, but learning from everyone and even learning
Thank you,
from
ma'am.
the silence. And my charge would be for us to go deep. There's the tendency to stay on the surface. There's this tendency to wonder what our drop can make. But I'll leave this with everyone to believe in the difference you can make in the world. It's a journey a lot of us are still on. So beyond the faces you've seen on the flyer, your difference makes a world of difference. If it was just 4 persons who was on the flyer who were here, it wouldn't have made a difference. The stadium
At all.
as important as the 21 men playing on the pitch, or 22, 11 on both sides, depending on what you have, is the people who are in the stands. So you call them spectators, but they are really they're the superpowers that
True.
make it worth it. That's who each and every one of us is in our different spheres. So yeah, believe in the
Thank you.
difference. You can make it.
Thank you, Olamide. Thank you so much. Sammy, you have one more town hall quote to drop.
Exactly. Ready, set. Let me put the icing on the I'm not a big up. I'm not a big up. That said, our generation counts and is counting on us. And I'm not saying it to motivate us, it's just a fact. The moment we realize this, we would view our actions and inactions within that context. As for me, I'm the light of the world. And I believe I may not know the extent to which my existence will impact Nigeria, but one thing I know for sure, that it will definitely impact this country. So please, each and every one of us on this call, let us go with that in mind, that a generation depends on our manifestation. Thank you very much, Peter, for having us. And thanks to Olamide and others who have listened to. God bless you and have a wonderful.
Thank you, everyone. Do make sure to check us out on our various social media handles at Clariquity. Oh, is the October 2020? That is probably
most
still finding an
definitely.
outlet through you.
Most definitely.
All the same. Thank you for lending a voice. Well, I think we can hear the ladies in their silence. I can hear them. On behalf of their silence, I am saying they are part of the critical minority. We'll be back again in November. God bless you. God bless Nigeria. And God bless the good dreams and aspirations we have for ourselves and the country. Take care, everyone.